Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Another week of Wrestling with Wrestling. I'm your host, and joining me, as always, is Doc Gregory, live from hell this week, apparently.
I don't know what's wrong. Something's up with my camera. I was testing it out here a few moments earlier. It was working just fine. Then we went live, and all of a sudden, boom! Here I am in the pits
Yeah.
of hell, broadcasting live with you. Uh, so just so you know, there is a hell, and apparently I'm here. So I'll get a room ready for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's nice to have someone already down there that I know,
Sure.
so I can, yeah. So, me being still on Earth and you being in hell, let's not let that stop us, and we'll talk a little bit of wrestling. And I actually want to be. We'll get into last night's Raw in a little bit because I thought that was a pretty good show for the most part. But I wanted to talk a little bit about NXT first because now that it's on the WWE Network, we can both check out NXT. And you watched a little bit of the most recent show. What were your thoughts on? I guess it was your first like regular NXT show, right? Because you
Yeah,
first started with Arrival.
Yeah, Arrival was coming kind of like their introduction, their little pay-per-view they did, and they definitely showcased all the stars. And then, I went to next week expecting, because my expectations were pretty high on it because that was the first thing I ever saw, and then I was kind of taken aback by seeing more of the other stars that I haven't actually seen yet, like Corey Graves and Adam Rose, who were completely new to me. I wasn't used to them at all, and their gimmicks weren't really getting over with me
Yeah.
right, and I understand that, they are still in developmental, that's why they're in NXT, but yeah, for some reason Corey Graves just did not get over with me. Something about him I don't like. His wrestling skills are great, it's just his gimmick. It's like that first time he come down to the ring, because he wrestled twice, he come down to the ring and he did that lean on the corner, on the post. And then, of course, comes out for a second match, and he's already wrestled a match, and, of course, he's still got enough to lean again against that post. It's like, for some reason, it didn't sit well with me. I don't
Yeah.
know what it was. It's something about that gimmick with the way he's holding himself doesn't work.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Adam Rose in a second because Adam Rose is new to me too because that's a brand new gimmick. The guy working that gimmick used to be he used to work under the name Leo Kruger, and he was working kind of like a Craven the Hunter gimmick. He was like a mercenary or something, and yeah, I actually kind of like that gimmick. But yeah, with Corey Graves, he's been an NXT guy for a while, and I feel the same way about him as you do. Like your first impression of him is pretty much my long-term impression of him. He's good in the ring. He's not bad on the microphone, but there's just something about his look. And I don't know. I watched him a few months ago in a match on NXT, and I mean it wasn't bad, but I just remember thinking to myself as I was watching it, man, this guy just ain't gonna make it. And it's not that he's bad. It's just I don't know if it's the skinny jean looking tights that he wears or the way he does his hair or what. But it just doesn't look. I can't imagine that guy being on Raw. I just can't picture that at all. But I thought he was better. Like he's been off TV for a while, and this NXT episode was the first time I've seen him for a while. And I actually think he's improving from how he was before. So.
Yeah, I think that gimmick, if the WWE is thinking that the gimmick's going to get over with anybody, even ladies, guys aren't going to dig it. There's no reason why they would. The ladies aren't going to like it because it's kind of passé. They've moved on.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Sometimes I don't know why WWE would pass on a genre of fashion that has passed on and expect it to get over, with modern fans.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, the thing about Graves is it's not really even sure what the gimmick is supposed to be. Like, is he supposed to be like a punk, like an underground guy? Because he doesn't quite. I mean, he just doesn't seem like a very tough guy.
To me, it's more like he probably listened to The Cure when he was in his teens.
Yeah,
And he's got the tattoos and everything.
yeah,
Look at me. Uh, well, I mean, I guess borderline you could tell, but when I was younger, I was a chubbier kid, and I am completely out of Nerdville.
Yeah.
Still nerd today.
Yeah, I mean he does have the "Stay Down" tattoos on his fists. That's pretty cool, but that's really like the only thing he's got. You know. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about Adam Rose because you said when we talked right before we went on the air that you weren't crazy about the gimmick, um, and I really loved his Leo Kruger gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
So I was sort of prejudiced against it, but I actually thought the Adam Rose thing was pretty good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it might grow on me. I mean, Adam Rose might grow. I think when I was introduced to him, because I didn't actually get the opportunity to see him as Leo Kruger, so I'll have to look some of that stuff up on YouTube. So maybe I'll get a better appreciation for who he is. But to me, he just came off as a really bad Russell Brand type character. You know, it's like his partying gimmicks and the way he kind of carries himself and swings his arms out to the side. Very. Oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Metrosexual. I think is the way he's carrying himself, and it's like, I guess I like Russell Brand in the movies. I don't really like him as a comedian, but I definitely like Russell Brand in my cereals for the morning.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I really like the gimmick of like the party crowd like bringing him down to the ring. I think if they did that on Raw, that would get over the first night. I mean, for better or worse, whether you like that sort of thing or you don't, if he did that gimmick on Raw, it would be over like immediately. And then they would probably do like a Brodus Clay thing where he was really hot for like 2 weeks, and then they would just completely forget about him. Because
my thing is never the top gimmick like that is fun, but it will wear thin after a while, and then if you just keep lingering on to it, you are dwindling your opportunity to become a real superstar. We've seen a lot of wrestlers take that hit.
Yeah, and you have to have more than just the gimmick if you want to be around, especially in the way they book the show now, where people are just dropped for no reason, even if it seems like they're doing a good job. Let's talk about one more NXT thing, and then we'll move on to Raw. Adrien Neville and Adrien Neville's promo, particularly on the show. I don't know if you had a chance to see that or not, but he had a match, which I thought was a really good match, a really good sort of a squash, like enhancement type match to get the new champion over. And he really looked dominant, and he really wrestled like a champion with like a new sort of confidence that you didn't usually see from him in the other matches. I had my doubts, even though it's the developmental territory, and you're still like the star of the show when you're the champion. And I had my doubts, even though I really like Adrien Neville, that he could be that sort of a guy, that he could be like a babyface, like dominant top champion. And I think he pulled that off really well. I thought he had a slightly more serious attitude in the ring, and I thought when he gave that promo to Renee Young after the match, he was a lot more, confident and relaxed than he usually is. And I think he could actually, if he stays in NXT for a while and ends up getting a decent run with that title, he could be pretty good in that role.
Yeah, I definitely like the look about him. He's got those ears on him that are very distinguishing, and I think not bringing much attention to him, just knowing that he's got them, that'll get over even with the girls. Girls will find for some reason that cute, and the accent will definitely win him over. I think he made a grave mistake by bringing attention to his accent in the way it is different in his promo. It's like don't play down on who you are, or don't make fun of who you are or the way you speak. You are who you are, and make that your strengths.
Yeah, and I guess you can. Yeah, and it's sort of like breaking the show don't tell rule. Like we can see that you're different just by watching you. You don't have to tell us how different you are. Just show us that you're different, but you're also great. But yeah, I think he really impressed me. I've liked him from the first time I saw him in NXT, but since Arrival and then this most recent NXT episode, he's really gone up. In my eyes, he's really looking good.
This reminds me of like a young Jerry Lynn.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I can totally see that. Yeah, and and the fact that they have guys like him on the roster, like that's if people who wonder why they didn't go after AJ Styles, all due respect to AJ, they've got like 5 of him.
Yep.
And one of them is Adrien Neville, and he's a lot younger, and he has the potential to be even better than AJ is. So let's move on to Raw. Raw, I thought, was a really, really terrific show for the most part. There were some parts of it, as there always is, there's some parts of it that weren't great, but there were some really, really good angles, some good matches. I think the build to WrestleMania is starting to take a more pleasing direction. Obviously, the Daniel Bryan stuff is moving forward. The slow burn breakup for the Real Americans is coming along really, really well. So I have a summary of it here, and we'll just sort of bounce through roughly in order of what happened on the show. It started with Hulk Hogan coming out again, and he sort of pimped the WWE Network again really quick, and then he announced that they're going to have this 30-man over-the-top rope battle royal at WrestleMania for a big trophy shaped like Andre the Giant.
I think that's an awesome thing. I mean, I thought that he came out and he gave some proper credit to where credit was due to the Macho Man Randy Savage, the Ultimate Warrior, to some really epic fights that he fought during WrestleMania, and I thought that was really nice of him to do that and go out there and and they talked about Andre the Giant, which was a good segue into announcing this Battle Royal. The Battle Royal is going to be great. It's going to give 30 superstars an opportunity to go out there and at least have a part of the show for WrestleMania 30, because WrestleMania 30 is going to be big. It's 30 years. I mean, it's a 0 year, so it's a decade year, so it's huge. I don't understand right now why Big E Langston announced why he's going to be in it. Because dude, you're a title holder. I expect you to wrestle, not be dicking around in the Battle Royal. But the trophy, awesome. I'm hoping that the WWE actually replicates that and sells that on their shop to them, because I am going to own me one of those Andre the Giant trophies. That thing is cool.
Yeah. And what I like about it is I think it's a good idea too. I wonder why they don't do a battle royal every year at WrestleMania. Whether it's 20-man or 30-man, I think it's just a great idea, especially since it's usually a long show, and there are so many guys on the roster who don't get a chance to get on the card. Like you say, it gives an opportunity. You can put 20 or 30 guys on the show in one match. And you can book a battle royal to last 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, as long as you need. It can fill whatever spot you need it to fill on the card, and it's great to sort of give fans a chance to kind of decompress after a really hot match. They could put maybe the Undertaker match on, and everybody's pulling their hair out, and then put the battle royal on, and it's fun and it's exciting because there's all those guys in it, but it's not you're going to be on the edge of your seat. It's just a fun match to have, and I don't understand why they don't do it every year. And I really hope that it's not just a one-time 30th anniversary thing. I really hope they start doing this every year. I would love to have an annual battle royal.
Yeah, I would think that now they're putting a trophy to it, that it almost makes it so that you're going to have to do it at this point, because I think just that Andre making this match is something special, and then dedicating it in Andre's name, that it would be nice to carry on that tradition and kind of get our mind off of other WrestleMania traditions we've had to deal with the last decade or so.
Yeah, or more.
2 decades.
Yeah. Yeah, and it would be, because they had for the first couple years they were doing Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, and I have mixed feelings about that match, but at least it was a special thing that you only saw at WrestleMania. And it's nice to have a specialty match that you're only going to see at WrestleMania. And if it's just a battle royal, but if you put the Andre the Giant name on it and give out an Andre trophy, it makes it special, and I like things like that. I'm a recurring event at a big show. I really like that sort of thing. So Cena comes out at the end of Hogan's promo, and you have kind of a back and forth between Cena and Hogan, and then out come the Wyatts. The Wyatt family comes out, and Bray Wyatt cuts a really good promo on Cena and Hogan.
Yeah.
That winds up with Cena, who originally had wanted to enter the Battle Royal, withdrawing from the Battle Royal and challenging Bray Wyatt to a match at WrestleMania. So it looks like it's official now. We're going to definitely get Bray Wyatt versus Cena at WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's what I heard in the rumorville, that it was going to be Bray Wyatt, and that's certainly what they were leading up to. That's where the stories were leaning, that Bray Wyatt and John Cena would go at it at WrestleMania. And then, I was kind of taken for a loop when John Cena came out there and put his name into the Battle Royal. It's like, wait, don't you have, John Cena, come on. You're already the biggest star. Let's not hog up all the spotlight, dude. You're already going to get your match with Bray Wyatt. So I just wasn't aware that it wasn't so yet. And apparently it's still not so. I mean, it may be at this point, but after that segment, when he challenged Bray Wyatt still never answered him.
Right. Well, yeah, but then I think later on in the show, during that backstage promo that the Wyatts cut, Bray said he accepted the challenge.
I was surprised for it. The best thing about that promo, and it was kind of nice, but sickening to my stomach, was to see John Cena and Hogan to the Real American theme song and doing the Hogan pose downs.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Like there's a part of me that's still like 9 years old that loves to see that shit, and when a guy like Cena, who's sort of the Hogan of this generation, is doing that, it's like there's something that's really cool about that. But then there's like the 33-year-old part of me that is like, are we still having to watch this Hogan shit? Like, is he really still in a wrestling ring going like this? I mean, like, so there's sort of two halves of me going at it when I watch Hogan.
As long as you don't put those tights on, as long as you don't lace up those boots.
Yeah,
I'm all right, And if you want to have a part in the WWE, behind the scenes, general manager's great, a great idea. Just do not get in the ring ever again, and I'll be satisfied with whatever position you want to fill in WWE. That's where you belong. That's your home. You helped build that home.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that you mention it, I mean, if they ever decide that they want to go back to having one on-screen authority figure as opposed to like 6. They could just designate Hogan as, the commissioner or whatever, and so that way, we don't have Triple H and Stephanie and Kane and the general managers and Vince whenever Vince comes back. There's so many people on camera now that are given the authority to make matches. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous. And if they ever wanted to, chop that back down to a reasonable number and just make Hogan like the current version of like Jack Tunney, where he's not even there every week. He's in charge, and if somebody has a problem, he's the one who comes out and settles it.
Yeah, he comes out and he shakes his double chin around, makes announcements and title matches at pay-per-views. That's all he does.
Exactly.
I mean, I miss Jack Tunney, man.
Me too.
Those were the days, Me
too.
Nostalgic about those old days. I'm gonna break out my rubber dolls later and play with them.
I miss Jack Tunney too. I think a lot of it is because that's just the way I remember things, and I started being a wrestling fan mostly of WWF in that era, but Jack Tunney to me is like the perfect use of an on-screen authority figure. Mm-hmm. He's not on every show. You almost never even see him in the arena. Like he's always like in his office, doing like a pre-tape thing. But he's he's in charge. They mention his name. That if there's a problem, he's the one who sort of makes the decision and settles everything. And that's the perfect way to use that sort of thing. I'm so tired of the guys come out and they have a promo and they get into an argument, and then whoever's in charge of the show comes out and says, well, why don't we settle this tonight and have a match? I mean, it worked so much better when they would just have the announcers say, okay, Bret Hart's fighting Mr. Perfect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these days it's so easy to just kind of like, ladies and gentlemen, by the authorities' rules, who are not here tonight, and neither is Kane, or Vicky Guerrero, or Teddy Long, or Brad Maddox, or anyone else, I am in charge of Raw.
Yeah.
And therefore, everybody's going home.
Exactly. No, there's not going to be any show tonight.
Yeah, because, hey, I'm taking off work. Shit.
Well, I mean, it's it's wrestling, and there's stuff about it that's just never going to make sense no matter how hard you try. But you know, it does create all these problems when like guys like huge stars on the show like John Cena will come out to the ring and they'll challenge somebody to a match and they have the match that night and you have to think like, well, what was John Cena gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Like if Randy Orton hadn't come out and gotten in his face, what was he gonna do? Did he have a match? He's like, it makes no sense. Like everybody just kind of show up and we'll just make the show up as we go along. You know?
You gotta go backstage when you ask for a match in wrestling and the other guy doesn't want to accept. You got to go back and you got to get the booker to delegate between you and that person to book that match. That's what the booker does. He delegates a match because sometimes a good guy was like, I don't want to play him. He'll beat me up. So that's part of the booker's job is to just get everybody on the same page and talk each participant into wrestling a match, and therefore that's why a booker is so important in wrestling, people. Backstage information you never knew.
Yeah. After the Cena and Shield, or not Shield, Wyatt's and Hogan stuff, that's when Triple H and Stephanie come out and they apologize to Daniel Bryan for last week, and then they ask Bryan to come out later in the show, and they say that they won't fire him for putting his hands on Triple H. Hang on a second, I have a cat stepping all over my headphones. I don't know if you heard that thump just now, but that was my cat hitting the fucking floor. So they say that Daniel Bryan could be fired if he doesn't apologize for putting his hands on Triple H. So he can come out later in the show and say he's sorry. Mm-hmm. And actually, I thought it was a decent heel promo from Triple H and Stephanie. I liked when the crowd does the no thing, and when Stephanie says, we all know that Daniel Bryan's not man enough to face my husband, and the crowd goes, no, no, and Steph goes, you're right. The answer is no. He's not man enough. So that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's something about Stephanie. It's like I'm on the fence about her. Here she is. She's a powerful woman. She is smart. She's strong. She's beautiful. And then she makes these faces when she's talking that just make me cringe up. I'm like, oh God, it's like something you wouldn't want to. It's like she just flashes these evil grins, and it just, I don't know what it is about her. It drives me freaking crazy, and it's like that's all I can zone into anytime I hear Stephanie McMahon talking. That was like all I could think of last night. Like, please give the microphone to Triple H.
I'll give her this though. I think actually that she is a better, or at least I think she's a more acceptable heel to me in terms of just my wrestling taste, because she's a lot better at sort of taking what the fans think and using it against them, or incorporating it into her gimmick. Like we'll talk about their promo later in the show in a minute, but when she says to the fans later on when Bryan is out there in the ring, how, you fans, you're just drunk on the power of this Daniel Bryan movement, and power can go to your head. And she says it like with no awareness of all that she's talking about herself, and she does that perfectly. And I feel like if Triple H had said that, he would push too hard, or he would try to make himself look cool while saying it. And it seems like Steph is more comfortable being just the old school heel, where it's like she doesn't care if she says something funny or if people secretly like her when they boo her. Like, I feel like that's kind of what Triple H does a lot. Like he wants people to boo him because he's the heel, but he kind of wants people to like him too, like the NWO sort of thing. And Steph is much more comfortable doing I'm just going to be evil and a bitch, and you're going to hate me, and that's just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, Stephanie's good at filling out that part, because that is pretty much all she's ever known throughout her life. Was she's lived a pretty good life without having to be told no too many times.
Yeah, I think that's why that gimmick resonates so well when she does it, because when she comes out later in this show and gets all entitled and whiny about I was born into this company and this is my company, like that's kind of true. It's not just a wrestling gimmick. That's the way it actually is.
Yeah, kind of. I reflect on that, thinking that I'm kind of glad that they've taken the veil off of who is really running the company. It started with Vince, but now it's like it's opened up into to the family now. It's carried on. It's not, everybody hasn't gone behind the scenes anymore, because we know that the people out there are really people that are going to be, if not in full control at this point or running things by this point, they in fact will be doing so in the future. And it just to think about their past in the WWE and then paint them as the perfect asshole company leaders. I think they have something pretty good on their hands for the future. I do definitely like the way it's going. I think they could scale it down. Let's not make your the authority like an old NWO thing and have different assets. Let's just bring it down to like you two as the power couple and someone that you delegate your business to.
Yeah, right. I mean, they're really great. They're really great heels. It's just the only problem I have with the way that they come across on the show sometimes is, and sometimes it's difficult to separate, these little comments that Triple H says just to troll the internet fans from things that might actually be happening backstage, because for whether it's fair or not, I mean, when Triple H says, Daniel Bryan isn't in my league and he's just a B-plus player, I mean, yeah, obviously he's being a heel and that's part of his program with Daniel Bryan to say that. But there's also that perception that the real Triple H really feels that way about Daniel Bryan, So, and it's hard to separate those two sometimes. So then we get, there's a tag team match, Ryback and Curtis Axel versus the Usos.
How did we really see that one turning out?
Yeah, yeah, really.
Ryback. The biggest thing was Ryback announced his entrance into the Battle Royal at WrestleMania. So Ryback's in it. Yay!
Yeah, and he's going to be the greatest big guy in the history of WWE. I like that. Yeah, and I actually thought it was a really short match. Not a great match, but I like the Usos spot where one of them dives over the top and he tags the other guy in, like as he does the dive, so he can climb up and do the Superfly Splash. I thought that was a good, like kind of a handoff to do the finish.
Yeah, but they've been doing that. They dropped that move about 3 or 4 weeks ago in a tag match, and that's the first time I noticed it, and I was kind of like, wow, that was really cool, and they brought attention to it on the program, and I think since then they've been doing it a lot more often.
Been trying to work it in, yeah.
Leads to their finish.
Yeah, I think it's a good double team. It's not the sort of thing you see from too many other teams. Then there was this backstage segment with Kane and the Shield, which I thought was pretty good. I like the way Roman Reigns kind of uses Kane's terminology of you're going to have to exorcise this demon against him at the end, and says, "Oh, don't worry, we're the Shield. We'll take care of any demons that might get in our way." And he gets in Kane's face right before he left. I thought that was really good. Still no complaints about the Shield. I think they've been one of the best parts of the show for months.
Yeah, they were throwing. I love the way they were throwing Kane's losses to Daniel Bryan in his face.
yeah, which is a great way to get under Kane's skin as a heel, and also a great way to build up Daniel Bryan, which it seems like hopefully for real this time they're finally starting to do. Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that they've let Bryan beat Kane on TV a couple of times recently, and I love the fact that they're letting other people throw it in Kane's face. That's that's the sort of stuff that helps. So then we got Big E versus Swagger, and this is another pretty short match that is just sort of used to keep the slow burn breakup of the Real Americans going. And I'm actually pleased with how this is turning out, because I kind of thought they were going to break the Real Americans up a couple weeks ago. But they've actually stuck with it, and they're doing more of a slow burn with it. Where at this point, both Swagger and Cesaro are kind of at each other's throats, and it's kind of hard to tell who's going to go which way when they finally do break up, and I think that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool angle where, if you think about it, Jack Swagger was that first real American with Zeb Coulter, and then eventually along came Cesaro. But Cesaro is looking at himself now as the bigger wrestler. He's moving along, and he's in this group, the Real Americans, so he should be, the stronger one of the Real Americans. Then you got Jack Swagger, kind of that animosity of seeing Cesaro in his situation, and he is feeling that he was actually the first one. He's the true Real American in this group, so neither one of them really want to leave it because it's their group. They feel like they represent the group the best. So the struggle between them not wanting to leave Zeb Coulter, I think, is played off really well. And as long as they can keep on find new stuff to agitate them, but keep them together, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's actually I'm surprised. I figured that they were just going to do the typical, kind of lazy tag team breakup just to justify them having a match, and it's actually turned into because they've kept it going so long. It's turned into a really interesting part of the show because the way they've set it up, you can't quite tell when the breakup is going to happen, or who's going to finally turn on who, and and like you say, they each have sort of their reasons for not turning and wanting to keep the team together, and it's really interesting. Kudos to the creative team on that because it's turned into a much more interesting breakup angle than you would have thought it was when they started it. And I don't want the team to break up at all. So for me to say that, I really enjoy it. Then there was the Undertaker segment. I think it's probably a good thing that they're not letting Taker talk very much. Mm-hmm. Paul Heyman came out and did most of the talking, cut another good promo. Paul Heyman is always a good promo, and I liked the way he brought up the past winning streaks at WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm. History lesson. I love the history lesson that he gave. That was great.
Yeah, and it's a great history lesson, and it's sort of a subtle plug for the WWE Network, because hey, you can go back and watch all those old WrestleManias if you're a member of the WWE Network, and it's just cool to think about. Like, just think of how long-term and consistent Undertaker's run on top has been. Where like the number 2 winning streak at WrestleMania, I think what did they say? It was Cena with like 4 or 5, something like that. I mean, it's really impressive when you think that Taker's had 21 straight wins at WrestleMania, and the second place guy has like a quarter of that. It really puts that streak in perspective. And then, of course, Heyman turns it around and says, so since I don't want you to lose the streak either, please don't wrestle Brock Lesnar because he's going to kill you. I think that's a good way to do it, because I mean the only story really about the streak that they ever tell, that they really can tell, is this going to be the year that the streak ends? And we all sort of know that they're never going to end the streak. But the trick is always every year, how do you trick people into thinking, well, shit, maybe they will end the streak this year. So I mean, especially if it turns out to not be that great of a match, you really have to have that uncertainty in the fans' minds. I don't know what they're planning for the next couple weeks. I kind of hope that they at least do one spot where Brock just puts Taker down. I don't know if Taker's physically able to do something like that, or if they want to risk hurting him before the match, because I know he's sort of in like a delicate condition in his age. But I mean, that would be something to just have Brock come in and just murder him like he's murdered Mark Henry a couple of times.
Yeah, chair shots, just hang with the chair, and then you don't have to go brutal on him, but it could sell that at least. Just beat him up with a chair. All you got to do is take a little front bump, and you got over on the Undertaker.
Yeah. Maybe have Taker need to be helped out or something.
Yeah. As long as Paul Heyman can keep on going with being the mouth of Brock Lesnar, which he's definitely good at being the mouth of anybody, just to kind of sell that to the Undertaker that you should be really proud of your accomplishments in the past, and that there's really no need for you to go any further. There's nothing else for you to do. And you're getting up there in the age. You really shouldn't be doing this anymore. It's probably just best that you go, and relax and just suck up the accolades of your life. And because if you don't, Brock Lesnar is going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean that Brock is the guy that they can do that with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Brock is the guy that can come in and say, "Look, Undertaker, it's been fun and all, but you're 50, and Brock's going to kill you." I mean and I think they can make that, they can sell that. And
Yeah, I officially have a bit of interest in this match at this point. I went from no interest at all to okay, I'm listening, I'm watching now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it's a good match. I mean, it's the thing is like it's been so long since Brock and Taker had a match.
Mm-hmm.
When they worked together, when Brock was in the first time around, they had some decent matches together. I remember the Hell in a Cell match they had at, I think it was one of the off month pay-per-views, like No Mercy or something. They had a Hell in a Cell match in like 2003, I think, when Brock was the champion. And I remember that match for two reasons. I remember Taker had a broken hand. I'm pretty sure it was just a work, but he had a broken hand going into the match, and he had a cast on his hand. And Brock spent the whole match just beating the shit out of Undertaker's hand and ripping the cast off and like hitting it with the steps and stomping on, just murdering the guy's hand. And then, like in the last 5 minutes of the match, it's like Taker just completely no-sells the hand and is like doing choke slams on Brock and shit. It's like he just completely decided, you know what, fuck selling this hand. And it's like the whole match up to that point was just completely pointless. And then I also remember Paul Heyman on the outside screaming, "Brock, we're losing!" like over and over again. But that was a good match. If they could have a match in that range for WrestleMania, that would be all right. Mm-hmm. But who knows? That's 10 years ago. Who knows if either guy can have a match like that anymore? So next, I think, was the Shield versus Rhodes Brothers match, and that was a nice long TV match, and a good match, and it ended with Seth Rollins getting the pin on Cody.
I like this because we feel that at this point, when we first started talking about the Shield exploding and that they were going to break up, I kind of felt bad for Seth Rollins, thinking that it's going to be a heated argument with Dean and Roman, and that Seth would get lost in the shuffle. I think that by prolonging this breakup and you taking the opportunity to bring Seth up to an equal level, that they've done a really good job preserving at least his reputation when this team really does go. It's like they're not really just penning him as the middle guy. They're penning him as the real support of the Shield. He's the guy that really holds that group together. He's the support for Dean and the support for Roman to keep them all on one page. So.
Yeah, and that's important, I think, to keeping that concept that makes the Shield such an interesting group, is that they were three equals. It wasn't, one guy and then his two lackeys like you get a lot if you do a three-man group. When they did like Legacy, it was Randy Orton clearly was the guy in charge, and DiBiase and Cody were his two little henchmen. And even with the NWO, I mean, once Hogan showed up, it was kind of the Hogan show. Even though Nash and Hall were still very much a huge part of it and were very important, and but with the Shield, it really seems like they're three of a kind. No one guy is ahead of the other two, and they had, there was sort of a feeling for a while there that maybe Seth was going to fall behind a little bit, and I'm really happy to see that they're keeping him up front and making them like it's truly a three-person group.
Mm-hmm. Now the real question is, when the time comes, will they do right by the Wyatt family as well? They've done a really good job of doing that with Shield, but Wyatt family at this point, they haven't been painted as equals at all.
No, and actually, I mean, shit, if I was booking the show, I wouldn't even be like breaking up the Wyatt family wouldn't even be in the back of my mind. Mm-mm. I mean, that's one of the sad parts about the way they do WWE, in the last 15 years or so, is like it seems like whenever they get a group or a tag team together, the clock is automatically ticking on when they're going to do the breakup. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, the Rock and Roll Express, I mean, they did do a breakup angle briefly in WCW, but for the most part, they've been a team for 30 years. I mean, you can have a group stay together. You can have a tag team stay together. It doesn't just have to be an excuse to do a breakup angle down the road. So I would be like, break up the Wyatts. Fuck no. They're here. They're staying together. Yeah, because you're right. If they ever did that, other than, I mean, I think Luke Harper would probably be okay, but I mean, Eric Rowan, shit.
He fared well against John Cena. I mean, he pretty much dominated the majority of that match with John Cena, that opening match. John Cena just pulled out that wink victory,
Yeah.
That weak ass victory. Rolled him up.
I do like the other two Wyatts. They're giving him more promo stuff to do when they do those backstage scenes, and I like Rowan like getting real close to the camera with his his sheep mask on and going run. I think that's that's a good thing for him to do. He reminded me of Toby Benson a little bit. when he got like real like right into the camera, like his nose like right into the camera. So
Steve is plugging one of his other YouTube videos. You should check out more of his channel so that you can see what he's talking about. If
you're just
you're like, what the hell? What are these wrestling guys talking about?
Exactly. if you're just a wrestling fan watching this, you're like, who the fuck is Toby Benson? There's other shit on my channel you can watch. Okay, so let's go to the. There was some other stuff after this. There was a Divas match, and there was some other sort of fucking around. But the next big segment was the Daniel Bryan segment. The next big segment was the Daniel Bryan segment, where he takes Raw hostage and refuses to leave the ring until he gets his match with Triple H. And I thought this whole thing was terrific. I loved the fans coming into the ring in the ringside area, and I mean, I thought that was just a really cool visual of all those people in the ring and around the ring, doing the yes chant with the T-shirt. I just thought, man, this is such a great moment, such a great visual on my TV, and what a great way of getting Daniel Bryan over and telling people like, okay, this is a big deal. Look at all these people. Look at this support that this guy is being shown. This is important. This is a big deal.
When I was watching this segment, I saw them all come out, and I know that there was a pretty good portion of the people that came out that were your caterers and backstage crew. But a very large portion of them were actual fans that came out, and so I'm watching this and I'm going, hey, check it out. There's $25. 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 25. 25. 25. 25. 25. Holy shit! Did Daniel Bryan really rake in the fucking money this week? Hint, hint, wink.
Exactly.
Nudge, nudge. Say no more.
Yeah, I was actually. It turned out great. I liked the whole segment, but when he first said, I talked to some people in the back and come on out here and get in the ring. And the first couple of guys got in the ring, I was worried that it was going to end up looking so stupid because I mean, look, they looked like wrestling fans. They were kind of pasty, out of shape white guys, not unlike myself. And they didn't look great on TV, and they didn't look, and it was like, oh shit, they're going to do this thing where all of Daniel Bryan's fans are losers, and they're ganging up to support him, and Triple H is going to come out and make fun of everybody, and it turned out to be exactly the opposite. Like by the time they got back from the break and the ringside area was filled, and there were all those people, it was so cool looking, and I was just like, oh yes, like I'm so I'm glad they're finally doing this. And treating this guy like he is a big deal. And then when Triple H came out and Steph did this demon voice.
She's a demon. She's a demon.
She was like, get out of my range! It was crazy. But
the she-devil.
Oh man! And so the whole point was Bryan was taking over the show, and he wasn't going to leave the ring until Hunter gave him his match at WrestleMania, and they did a great job of sort of faking it out a couple of times. Hunter sent security down, and security just kind of turned around and came right back. It was like, what are we supposed to do? There's like 100 people. And then they sent Damien Sandow down, and he was like, nope. And so Hunter finally gives him the match, And then the best surprise of all, and the final sort of fake out ending, was Hunter finally says, "Okay, Daniel Bryan, you've got it. I'm gonna wrestle you at WrestleMania, and I'm gonna kick your ass, and I'm gonna end this whole thing." And Bryan says, "Well, that's great, but that was only the first thing that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing I want is if I beat you at WrestleMania, I get inserted into the main event," which they had never mentioned before as a possibility. Bryan had never said that was one of the things he wanted. It was a complete, surprise, and I think that it worked so well because, as we've talked about on this show for weeks, that's exactly what people want. They don't want to just see Daniel Bryan kick Triple H's teeth down his throat. They want to see him in the main event, and now they've come up with the perfect road to get him there. So the fans will have a rooting interest, like people who don't give a shit about Batista and Randy Orton now have a reason to care about that main event. I mean, I thought it was great.
Yeah, here's what I want to talk about when it comes to this, because I'm sure the writers and Triple H and everybody have been banging their heads off the freaking wall, wondering how they could, at this point now that Batista came in, ultimately failed, he's going to be a heel. They knew they were stuck with a heel versus heel. How could they change up the main event at WrestleMania? The fans want Daniel Bryan. How can we get him there? Because we can get that match booked. Banging their head off the wall, trying to figure out how do we tell this story. And I just want to reach out and say thank you to last week's Raw fans who were talking about hijacking Raw for the night for CM Punk, because you, in fact, gave WWE that idea to sell Daniel Bryan's match with him and get him into the WrestleMania match. If he hijacked Raw, they took your fucking idea, Chicago, and ran with it, and it sold.
Absolutely. And look, it looks like you're no longer in hell.
Holy crap!
You've been saved.
Oh, the truth shall set me free.
Yeah. Did you get Jesus?
Oh no, maybe I yelled or something.
Maybe during one of those periods during the show when I was running my face, I thought maybe you had said the sinner's prayer or something and you got lifted back up. I thought it came off terrific. And they have the perfect path now to put on a great, exciting show and give people who love Daniel Bryan exactly what they want, and to sort of redeem themselves for all this shit that they've done the last couple of months, trying to make Batista the top guy and fucking around Bryan, fucking around Randy Orton, which is something that people, the internet fans, don't talk about this as much, but I mean, Randy Orton has been as poorly used these last few months as Daniel Bryan has, because he's been made to look like a punk and a loser who can't beat anybody without help.
He's just a guy with a belt. He's just a guy with a belt, roaming around. Nobody cares about him.
Yeah, and so it helps him out too. It gives people a reason to give a shit about his match at WrestleMania. I do have one concern, and it's probably just wrestling nerd paranoia, and I hope that's what it is, and I'm not going to let it dampen my enthusiasm, because I think the whole Daniel Bryan thing last night was awesome, and I'm really excited about them moving in that direction for WrestleMania. But I did have a thought after they made that stipulation of if Bryan beats Triple H, he gets into the main event. I thought, what if Bryan beats Triple H like by disqualification, and Triple H doesn't lay down for him or tap out, and technically Bryan wins the match, but Triple H still comes out looking like the better man. And just like they have it both ways, like Triple H gets out of the match with Bryan without having to really put him over, and then Bryan still gets to go into the main event. I hope that's not what they do. I hope they really just give Bryan the Hulk Hogan treatment and just have him go in there and have a great match with Triple H that ends with him kicking his head off and pinning him for a 3 count and then going into the main event and winning the title. I hope that's what they do. I think that's what they're going to do. If they weren't going to do that, I don't know why they would even go to the bother of setting it up. But that is like my little paranoid wrestling nerd worry that, oh shit, Triple H is going to worm out of, having to put Bryan over. But I hope that's not what happened.
Yeah, I have a feeling that that Triple H is not really going to look weak. As you said earlier, you think that the way he talks about him being the A+ player, that he firmly believes that, and he is. He is an A+ player. That I don't think. I agree with you. I don't think he's going to look weak. I think to sell that is to just hit him with a sledgehammer, not go to town with him, don't injure him, but hit him with him, knock him out, get you disqualified, and then make it early in the evening, and then you bring Bryan out, who could hit him in the arm. You know Bryan can sell that arm, so hit him in the arm. Looks like he's got the arm injury. He comes out, he'll still be able to work a really strong match and persevere and really get over with the fans for being able to do that.
Now, if they did exactly what you said, but they did it after Bryan pinned Triple H.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be perfect because I mean you're right. If let's say Bryan puts Triple H in a small package and pins him to win the match, that's at least him actually winning the match. It's not Triple H just getting disqualified. Bryan pins him, rolls him up, gets him into like a sudden roll-up maneuver or a small package and pins him, and Triple H is pissed off and just grabs the sledgehammer or a steel chair and just beats the shit out of Daniel Bryan. Michael Cole can say, Daniel Bryan's been taken to a local medical facility. They can do all that horseshit, and then Bryan comes back just in time for the last match. I mean, that would be great because that's like
and not even a full match, because we all love it when, like, in mid-match you just see the guy storming down in the ring. He's like, got his arm bandaged up or something, and he just pops into the match mid-match, and then the crowd just goes nuts. So you don't have to bring him out at the beginning to get it over.
Oh yeah, and have like referees and like paramedics walking in front of him trying to push him back. No, Bryan, no. I mean, that would just be so great. So I don't know.
We're writing this. Me and Steve are writing this. Yeah. So WWE, if you really need storylines, that's Steve Shives over there talking. I'm Doc Gregory. We are available all the time, so just give us a holler. We got great ideas.
Just give us a call, just to consult. Yeah. Get ready to hear a lot of Push Cesaro.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and write that down. Like we just say that all the time. So that whole segment was great. I loved, like I said, I loved Stephanie as a heel, talking about doing like the spoiled princess thing, but doing it in a way that she didn't realize she was doing it. I just thought that whole thing was great. I like Triple H having to be pulled back like by security. Like they sort of tackled him and dragged him backstage. He was so angry. And then Bryan in the ring doing the yes thing with all the fans. I thought that was terrific. Next was yet another match between Sheamus and Christian. I think these guys have wrestled each other on every episode of Raw and SmackDown for like the last month.
Should end in a cage match at WrestleMania, because we don't know what either one of them are doing. But if they keep going like this, they won't have anything for them at WrestleMania. That's
exactly what I thought. I thought because it seemed like that's where they're going, that these two are going to do something at WrestleMania, because they have nothing else going on, and the clock's ticking. But yeah, it's like they're having a street fight on Raw. Like, what are they going to do at WrestleMania? It's all going to be done, and we'll be sick of seeing them. They'll wrestle each other like 6 or 7 times.
Yeah, TLC match.
Oh yeah, I mean, they basically had kind of a hardcore match here, and I didn't think it was bad. I think I like Christian as like the really angry, frustrated heel.
Mm-hmm.
At least it gives him a reason to be there. Although we've talked before about it's kind of weird that that Christian got pulled out of the hat to be used in this role when they have other people that they could be doing it with. But I got nothing against Christian. I like Christian, and they have good matches. But it's just like, Jesus, how many times are these guys going to fight each other? But it was a good hardcore match. It was a Memphis street fight, and
I love guitars. I love guitars.
There were guitars around the ring. There was a full drum kit sitting there the whole match, like Chekhov's gun. You just knew that was going to go off at some point. And when they finally paid off the drum set, I thought that they did that really well, with Sheamus doing the bro kick through the bass drum into Christian's face. I thought that was really clever and a really good way, because you knew they're doing something with that drum. As soon as they do, that drum kit's not just going to sit there. And that was a really good way to use that, a really inventive spot.
Yeah, I think I do like a good hardcore match. I think they're a lot easier on a person than a regular match. You're not bouncing and taking a lot of hardcore bumps on your back or your spine, and a lot of that material out there is definitely wrestler approved. You know, if you showed me a steel chair and closed it and said, "Can I hit you with this?" I'd turn it the way you're supposed to swing it and go, "Right here, give it your best shot."
Right. So then after that, there was, I guess the next big thing was, there was that second Wyatt family promo where Bray officially accepts the challenge, and Bray had a couple of good lines in the promo. He's had, we've talked about how good his promos have been recently before, and he says to John Cena at one point, he said something like, your time is up. Like Cena always says, your time is up, my time is now. Mm-hmm. Bray says, your time is up, but I am forever. I thought that was a cool line. And I think he also said something about, like, when I look at Hulk Hogan, John Cena, I see your future. And I thought, man, that's such a great thing to say to John Cena. Like,
so true.
Yeah, and yeah, exactly. That's what makes it so great. It's like he's really become one of those sort of Jake the Snake type heels, where the things he says are even more effective when he says them, because you know that they're kind of true. You know, yeah, he's evil and he's a jerk, but he's not lying. You know,
John Cena's a better Hogan. He is a 100% yes man.
Oh yeah,
he'll do everything he's asked to do. He's a workhorse. At least Hogan knew how to say, "Go fuck yourself."
I would say, though, I mean, I think Cena's a better Hogan in terms of, like, just in the world of the show, and also in real life, because on the wrestling show, I mean, boy, they've been pushing Cena straight for like 10 years and have not let up. I mean, Hogan got about 4 years before they started to kind of phase him back and go, okay, let's try Macho Man, let's try Ultimate Warrior. Cena has been like, phew, you know, like, he's the man, and that's it. He's more.
The only few vacations John Cena has ever taken was due to injuries or filming bad movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Although his Bad Man video was epic, because he gave tribute to the A-Team. I thought the video was really cool.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. No complaints about showing love to the A-Team for me either. I mean, hey, if it weren't for the A-Team and Mr. T, who knows what the first WrestleMania would have been like? You know?
I still don't fly in planes, fool.
Oh, Mr. T.
Let's get him into the Hall of Fame, people.
Yeah, come on. If Drew Carey's in there.
They didn't announce anybody this week.
No, but yeah, if they're going to put some, I mean, you know, technically Mr. T main evented the first WrestleMania. Mm-hmm. I think the guy should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I mean, you know. So then we get the main event, and it's a tag team match of Big Show and Bryan versus Batista and Randy Orton. So Batista is definitely a heel, teaming with Randy Orton. They still sort of don't like each other, but it's getting to the point where, like, you know, they're both so obviously heels at this point that it's like, you know, okay, if, let's just say, Bryan doesn't beat Triple H at WrestleMania, are you really going to run Batista versus Randy Orton? Like, even within the pretend wrestling world of the show, it's like, okay, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, at least in this match they found common ground, because they're now aware of their enemy, which is Daniel Bryan. So as a team, they were at least they had something they both wanted to work on and achieve, which was trying to eliminate him from ever having his opportunity to face them at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and that's actually, I assume, just from last night and just trying to project into the next couple of weeks, I presume that's the direction they're going to go with Batista and Orton versus Bryan. Like, Batista and Orton will be the two guys who are like, hey, this is our match. You know, I'm the champion. I won the Royal Rumble. What are you doing here? You know, you don't belong here. And they're going to try to take Bryan out just to sort of keep him from horning in on their match, which I think is a good story.
He's beaten Orton twice.
Yeah, he pinned him at the end of this match, and he knocked Batista out, which, you know, you're never going to get any complaints from me about that. I mean, they could just the WrestleMania match could just be 20 minutes of Bryan taking turns kneeing those guys in the face, and I would think it was great.
There's a match on YouTube from Japan of a guy wrestling an Invisible Man. Daniel Bryan could wrestle the Invisible Man for WrestleMania, and I would still be interested.
Oh, absolutely, because he would make that Invisible Man look good.
Yes, he would. God, he's so good.
He would sell his ass off for the Invisible Man.
Daniel Bryan's a cream dream.
I'm telling you, I think in another 10 years, people are going to look back on Daniel Bryan the same way people look back on Shawn Michaels today. I mean, I think people are going to realize when they have a little bit of time. I'm talking about the people who don't really like him today, because he has a lot of people like me who think he's the bomb right now. But when we get a little bit more distance, people are going to look back and go, God damn, that guy was good. Just like people do with Eddie Guerrero, just like people do with Shawn Michaels, with Ricky Steamboat. Like, they're going to think, wow, holy shit, that was a great wrestler.
Yeah, being small is a curse in wrestling. You have to have something very special to reach that level of being an icon in the business. And it's guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels definitely changed the game when it came to that. Brought him down a little bit. Now, I mean, but we're still talking that was 6'2", 6'1" guys. Now we're talking. Oh yeah. Now we're talking a lot smaller than that, and granted, these wrestlers are phenomenal. They're better than any 6'3", 6'8" guy I've seen. When it comes to wrestling and their ability, and I'd rather watch that than two muscle guys try to duke it out with each other.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so that was the end of Raw. It was Bryan getting the clean pin on Orton, and then chanting yes at the end of the show. And I mean, I thought it was a really tight, good show.
Yeah, it was a strong show. It was a very strong show. I think they got everything over there. We're heading into the road to WrestleMania, getting closer and closer. They pushed that. They're pushing the network. And that's doing really well. Although I found that in the second week I've become more of a casual viewer to the network. I'm only watching like NXT and turning on from time to time. The main event I know runs live now, so yeah. So I'm only tuning in to special things and check their schedule if anything I want to watch. So I'm pretty casual with the network, but it's still worth it to me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm the same way. I checked out a couple of old pay-per-views in the last week or so, and some of them I don't even watch the whole thing. I just watch to a particular match and then go do something else. But like the last week, I watched the War Games match from Wrestle War '92 with the Dangerous Alliance versus Sting's Squadron, and man, what a great match! I mean, most War Games matches are good, but that's one of the best ones I think they ever did, because I think almost everybody in that match, it was one of the ones where it was 5-man team, so it's 10 guys in the match, and everybody in that match except for I think Bobby Eaton and Larry Zbyszko is already in the WWE Hall of Fame, and those two should be. So, I mean, what an amazing match. Oh, no, Nikita Koloff. Nikita Koloff's not in yet, but he should be. If they put Nikita Koloff in the Hall of Fame, that'd be great. That'd be fine by me, too. But, I mean, Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson, Larry Zbyszko, Sting, Rick Rude, Steve Austin, Ricky Steamboat, Dustin Rhodes. I mean, that is a hell of a match. And it's just, for you guys watching, if you haven't seen, or it's been a long time since you've seen the Wrestle War '92 War Games match, that is definitely one to check out. It's an awesome match. And I think
that sounds like a segue.
Yeah.
I'm listening to you going, that sounds like a segue to me.
Speaking of War Games.
I'll go ahead and announce it. It's coming up here on March 22nd, Saturday, at Frankfort High School in Ridgely, West Virginia. That's Frankfort High School in Ridgely, West Virginia. Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance is going to bring to you War Games. That is 2 rings, 1 cage surrounded the rings. We have 2 5-on-5 teams battling out in the cage. We have people like Shane Douglas is going to be there. TNA Zema Ion going to be there. We got the Elite Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion Jake Machine Davis, Tate Griffin, OGB, Brandon Scott. We got a ton and all the stars of Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance going to be going into this cage for the first time, and this is the first time something like this is going to happen in this area. It's never been done before, but we are going to have our own War Games. And that's the Elite Pro Wrestling Alliance, Saturday, March 22nd, Frankfort High School in Ridgely, West Virginia. Tickets are only $12, and they are going super fast, people. Very, very fast.
Yeah, if you're in our area and you're a wrestling fan, you should seriously consider checking out that show because it is as stacked as an indie wrestling show could possibly be. I mean, you got all those great stars. You've got the War Games gimmick. I mean, there are the names you recognize like Shane Douglas and the more sort of local guys. Like, I mean, I remember watching Jake Davis and OGB and Leslie Leatherman and those guys wrestle in Hagerstown at the House of Pain, you know, 10 or 12 years ago when they were basically still in training, and they were awesome then. And they're just such great talents, and that's going to be such a great show. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be a spectator in the stands. Doc's going to be there. You're working the show, right?
I'm going to be in one of the cages, baby.
You're going to be the referee on the show, so you're working the show. I'm going to be in the stands having a great time. If you're anywhere around here and you want to see a great wrestling show, you should check that one out because I can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, if you're interested in tickets, you can contact BT Sports. It's in the Cumberland Country Club Mall, so you can give them a call. That's BT Sports. That's at the Cumberland, Maryland Country Club Mall. So give them a call to reserve your tickets if you're interested. Like I said, they're only $12, and they're going fast.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. There's nothing quite like an indie wrestling show. It's in some ways it's even more exciting than going to like an episode of Raw or a big taping because you're right there, and you see things at an indie show that you probably wouldn't see at a WWE show nowadays, and you see talent that you won't see there. It's just a great experience.
It's cheaper than a movie and it's realer than 3D, people.
There you go. So before we wrap things up here, we always talk about a legend, and you have a great legend of the week this week, Doc.
Yes. I wanted to bring up a former manager in the WWF. A lot of us probably know him as a manager, but a lot of us also know him as a great wrestler, and I'm talking about Mr. Fuji. His real name was Harry Fujiwara. Now, he was born, you probably thought that he was Japanese, but he was actually Japanese-American, born in Hawaii. He rose up, let me get my notes out here because now I'm losing my track here. He actually wrestled in Hawaii for a while and won some tag team belts and with Curtis Akiya, but then he did some touring after that and started to team up with Professor Toru Tanaka and managed by the Grand Wizard when he started coming into the WWF. He won a lot of tag team belts. His first belt came a match against Sonny King and Chief Chase Strongbow in 1972. They reigned for 11 months, and what I'm thinking that is the third longest reign of WWE champions that have WWF Tag Team champions that have ever been. I should check my facts on that. They lost them to Tony Gurria and Haystack Calhoun in 1973, and they traded them back and forth a year after that. And then Fuji left the WWF after that, soon after that, and started to go in territories again, where he wound up in Georgia Championship Wrestling, where he captured the tag team championships down there with Mr. Tanaka, and but after losing those to Bob Backlund and Jerry Briscoe, he soon again left. So it seems like Mr. Fuji, when he loses belts, tends to, in his wrestling career, pop out of a promotion. That's kind of the way this seems to be going. So after that, he got back into the WWF, and now he's being managed by Classy Freddie Blassie. He wins the WWF Tag Team titles again in a tournament final against Larry Zbyszko and Tony Gurria. That was 1977, but then lost them to Dino Bravo and Dominic DeNucci in 1978 before leaving the WWF once again. Through 1979 and 1981, Mr. Fuji actually started to tour with Tanaka, and during this time they decided to take a split of their team and start wrestling more individual style. Tanaka went his way, and Fuji eventually actually started coming back to the WWF. He briefly teamed with Mr. Saito. I believe they were managed by Captain Lou Albano at the time. They regained the tag team belts. They feuded back and forth with Strongbows before losing the belts ultimately to them. Soon after, Mr. Fuji actually retired from wrestling altogether and became a manager in the WWF. This is where most people probably know Mr. Fuji, because this is where I actually know Mr. Fuji, because that's the only thing I've ever known him back. I've seen some old matches with him and George the Animal still, which are pretty classic. I do like to watch some of those old style matches with Mr. Fuji. But you may know that he was a great manager. He managed a lot of superstars in the WWF, along with, like I mentioned, George Still. He managed Don Morocco. He managed Jim Hart before selling his contract to Jimmy Hart. He managed Demolition. He managed Killer Khan, Sika, Powers of Pain, the Orient Express, the Berserker, and, of course, former WWF champion Yokozuna. He left the business ultimately in 1996. I always liked Mr. Fuji. He was very silent, very effective. He was very famous for throwing salt in your eyes. So that's my 2 cents when it comes to a great legend like Mr. Fuji. Back to you, Steve.
Thank you, Doc. I love Mr. Fuji. I was like delighted when you told me you wanted to do Mr. Fuji this week, because he was such a great heel in the 70s. He was one of the greatest heels of the 70s, I think. And then he became this amazing manager during the 80s, where he was like he could do like the evil thing, but he could do like a funny thing too. I mean, some of those he would do these skits with Don Morocco called Fuji Vice.
Fuji Vice. Oh, I love Fuji Vice. I have those saved in my computer.
Yes, that they would show like on Primetime Wrestling back in the day, and some of those are so funny. I mean, just so funny. And he also, I loved. They did a thing on WrestleMania 5 where they did the wrestlers were running a marathon, and I think Fuji won the marathon. Yeah,
he had rickshaw.
Yeah, and he cheated. Yeah, exactly. He cheated during the marathon. It was so great. And later on in his WWF career, he managed Yokozuna, and he was just a great manager, people. I've heard his name mentioned a couple of times when you listen to older wrestlers talk on wrestling podcasts. They talk about how Fuji was just such a great psychologist, and if you were part of the crew that traveled with Mr. Fuji, I mean, he was one of the guys who would critique your matches, who would be in the car with you drinking beer and saying, like, okay, let's talk about your match tonight. Why did you do this? When this guy did this, why did you react this way? Like, he was just a great psychologist and a great teacher. And even among guys who, he wasn't like formally their trainer or their teacher, like just by being around him and talking wrestling with him, he was able to teach so many wrestlers who came up in the 80s, just like important basics of how to work a match and how to have a match that flows and do moves that make sense, and just a really, really, really important figure in pro wrestling. And a guy like Freddie Blassie, who was a great wrestler first and then became a great manager.
Yeah, there's nothing like sitting down and getting a wealth of knowledge from someone who's been all over the world like Mr. Fuji. So I've had that opportunity with many wrestlers, but never anyone like that. I've always idolized managers and like Bobby Heenan. I had to do Bobby Heenan one week, and Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart's done a lot of things.
Definitely.
Sweet Sapphire. Wait a second.
Maybe not.
She brought the American Dream to the WWF.
Yes.
So, and I do love Dusty Rhodes.
Sweet Sapphire!
Oh, if you will, he's just a plumber's man. He's a common man, daddy.
I loved when the $1 Million Man stole Sapphire from Dusty Rhodes just to be an asshole. I thought that was one of the greatest feuds, because he just did it. He didn't want Sapphire. Sapphire was just a regular person, but he did it just to be a dick.
Yeah, DiBiase already owned a black person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Virgil. I'm sorry.
Speaking of great breakup angles, I mean, the Virgil $1 Million Man breakup was so awesome. When Virgil finally turned on him and put him on his ass, I mean, that was so satisfying. And I remember, like, looking back, they were really only together for less than 3 years, but at the time, I guess because I was a kid, like, it felt like they had been together for like 10 years.
Yeah, it did. When I reflect back on that, it seems like they had a really long relationship, but no, it wasn't really that long, I guess. Now that I think about it, but yeah, it seems like they were together for a while, and you wouldn't expect it because it went over so well because Virgil just was so obedient, to DiBiase and didn't say a word. You barely heard him say anything. Like there's a little vignettes that you saw when they were introducing Million Dollar Man, where he's telling little kids to get up out of the pool. That was like one of the few things Virgil ever said.
Yeah, and actually, I think that breakup took place at Royal Rumble 1991. So if you're a WWE Network subscriber and you want to see one of the great breakups of a partnership, Million Dollar Man getting dumped by Virgil is awesome. And I'm pretty sure it's Royal Rumble 1991 where that happened.
My favorite one is Strike Force, when Strike Force broke up. And Rick Martel became the model. That's one of my favorite breakups.
Yeah, me too. And I think that sort of spelled the end for Tito Santana as like a serious wrestler, because you like you said, like Rick Martel turns heel and becomes the model and goes on to do this whole new thing, and like 5 years later Tito Santana is still wrestling in his old Strikeforce tights.
He's doing the Matador. He became the Matador for a while.
Yeah, he eventually became El Matador, but yeah. Well, anyway, I say we wrap this up for another week.
Yes, sir.
So we'll be back next week to do this again. We're on the road to WrestleMania. Looks like, creatively speaking, things are moving in a positive direction as far as Raw. We'll have another episode of NXT to chat about. We'll have another episode of Raw to chat about next week. Who knows what will happen? Who knows what fantastic new WrestleMania matches Hulk Hogan will announce next week. And
it's going to be a stretcher match, brother. Me and the Iron Sheik.
Yeah, and it'll be, and the match will be who can get up off the stretcher first.
It's gonna be epic, dude. All for only $9.99 on the WWE Network, brother.
And what you gonna do?
What you gonna do?
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. Doc, as always, my friend. I'll see you next week.
Have a good night.